Ava had worked at Rosewood Diner for 5 years, a modest eatery tucked into the corner of a bustling city street. The scent of frying bacon and fresh coffee permeated the air, mingling with the sounds of clinking plates and lively chatter. Ava, with her dark brown hair swept into a practical bun, moved like a whirlwind between tables, juggling trays of food and managing orders with practiced ease. But beneath her smile lay exhaustion. Life had not been kind lately. Her mother's health was failing, the medical bills were mounting, and Ava barely scraped by on her meager wages and tips. As the lunch rush reached its peak, Ava approached table 9, where a lone customer waited. He was an older man, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, a stark contrast to the diner's usual clientele. His silver hair was neatly combed, and his posture exuded quiet authority. Ava couldn't help but wonder what had brought someone like him to a place like this. "Good afternoon," she greeted with her usual warmth. "What can I get for you?" The man glanced up, his sharp blue eyes meeting hers. "Spaghetti and meatballs," he said, his voice calm and deliberate. "And a glass of water, please." "Coming right up," Ava replied, though her curiosity lingered. When she returned with his order, the man stopped her. "What's your name?" Surprised, Ava hesitated before answering. Ava Morgan." "I'm Henry Caldwell," he said, extending a hand. "A pleasure to meet you, Ava." She shook his hand briefly, her mind racing. What did this man want? "I'd like your company while I eat, if you don't mind," Henry said, his tone polite but firm. Ava glanced around the diner. Every table was full, and her co-workers were just as busy as she was. "I'm sorry, Mr. Caldwell," she said apologetically. "I've got a lot of tables to manage. Maybe another time?" He nodded, seemingly unfazed. "I understand, but I hope you'll stop by when you get a moment." Later, during a brief lull in her shift, Ava returned to refill his water. This time, they exchanged a few words. Henry asked about her life, where she grew up, what brought her to the diner. And while Ava kept her answers short, she noticed a genuine interest in his questions. When he finished his meal, Henry left a business card on the table, along with a tip so generous it left Ava speechless. She stared at the card in her hand, her heart pounding. "Henry Caldwell, Caldwell Industries," it read, along with a phone number. As she slipped the card into her apron pocket, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Ava had almost dismissed the encounter at the diner as a fluke, but a week later, her phone rang. The voice on the other end was unmistakable. "Ms. Morgan, this is Henry Caldwell. I hope I'm not interrupting." Ava hesitated, gripping her phone tightly. "No, not at all. How can I help you, Mr. Caldwell?" "I'd like to invite you to my home for a discussion," he said. "I have a proposition that I believe could benefit us both." Her first instinct was to decline, but the thought of her mother's frail figure and the mounting stack of unpaid bills made her pause. Against her better judgment, Ava agreed. The following evening, Ava stood at the gates of Henry's estate. The towering iron gates opened to reveal a sprawling mansion surrounded by meticulously landscaped gardens. She felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach as she walked up the stone pathway. Henry greeted her at the door, his demeanor as calm and composed as it had been in the diner. He led her to a luxurious sitting room, where a fire crackled warmly in the hearth. After offering her tea, Henry got straight to the point. "I'm in need of a wife, Ms. Morgan," he began, his tone matter-of-fact. "Not for love, but for practicality. I'm growing older, and there are matters of legacy and companionship to consider. I believe you could fulfill this role." Ava stared at him, stunned. "You're offering a marriage of convenience?" "Precisely," he replied. "In return, I would ensure financial security for you and your mother. Your bills would be paid, and you'd never have to worry about money again." The weight of his words sank in. Ava thought of her mother's hospital room, the doctor's grim expressions, and the constant fear of losing everything. "But why me?" she asked. Henry smiled faintly. "You strike me as someone with potential, Ms. Morgan. Someone who deserves a chance to rise above her circumstances." The room fell silent as Ava considered his proposal. It felt like a lifeline, but also a sacrifice. She would be giving up her independence, her dreams, and perhaps even a piece of herself. After what felt like an eternity, she met Henry's gaze. "I'll need some time to think about it." "Of course," he said, his tone understanding. "Take as long as you need. But remember, opportunities like this don't come often." As Ava left the mansion that night, her mind swirled with conflicting emotions. Could she make such a monumental decision? Could she trade her freedom for security? When she arrived home, she found her mother asleep on the couch, her frail hand clutching a stack of overdue medical bills. In that moment, Ava knew her answer. 2 days later, Ava found herself standing at the gates of Henry Caldwell's mansion once again. This time, her resolve was firm, though her stomach churned with uncertainty. As she entered, Henry greeted her with his usual calm demeanor, leading her into a study adorned with shelves of books and fine leather furniture. "I take it you've made your decision?" he asked, pouring tea into a delicate porcelain cup for her. "Yes," Ava replied, her voice steady. "I'll agree to your proposal, but I need to understand the terms fully." Henry nodded approvingly. "Of course. Transparency is important." He gestured for her to sit as he outlined the arrangement. The marriage would be private, attended by only a handful of witnesses. There would be no romantic expectations. This was purely a partnership. In return, Ava's financial needs would be entirely covered. Her mother's medical bills would be paid immediately, and a monthly stipend would be provided for her family. Additionally, Henry assured her that she could continue her personal pursuits within the bounds of their arrangement. Ava listened intently, weighing every word. Despite his businesslike tone, there was an undertone of respect in Henry's approach. "Are these terms acceptable to you?" Henry asked. Ava hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "Yes, they are." "Good," he said, standing to shake her hand. "We'll arrange for the ceremony in 2 weeks. I'll have my assistant handle the details." As Ava left the mansion that day, her heart was heavy with the weight of her decision. She had agreed to a life she barely understood, but the thought of her mother's relief, and perhaps her gratitude, kept her moving forward. The wedding took place on a sunny afternoon in Henry's sprawling garden. Ava wore a modest ivory gown, the kind she never imagined herself wearing, and the ceremony was simple yet elegant. The only witnesses were a handful of Henry's close associates and staff. As she stood beside Henry, exchanging vows that felt more like a contract than a promise, Ava couldn't help but wonder if she was making the right choice. Yet Henry's calm presence provided an odd sense of stability. After the ceremony, Ava moved into the mansion with nothing but a single suitcase of belongings. The first few days were surreal. The house was enormous, its opulence overwhelming, and the staff treated her with deference that made her uncomfortable. Mornings began with polite breakfasts shared with Henry in the grand dining room. They spoke little, exchanging pleasantries before going their separate ways. While Henry spent hours in his study or on business calls, Ava wandered the mansion, trying to adjust to her new surroundings. One afternoon, she stumbled upon Henry in his study, engrossed in a heated phone negotiation. His voice was firm, his posture commanding, and Ava couldn't help but admire the sharp intellect that drove his success. He noticed her lingering at the doorway and beckoned her in. "Curious?" he asked, a hint of amusement in his tone. "A little," Ava admitted, stepping inside. Henry leaned back in his chair, studying her. "This isn't the life you're used to, is it?" "No," she said honestly, "but I'm trying to adapt." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You'll find your place here in time, Ava. Don't rush it." His words stayed with her as she explored the mansion in the days that followed. Though Henry remained distant, there was a kindness in his actions that surprised her. From ensuring her favorite tea was stocked to instructing the staff to respect her privacy, he seemed intent on making her feel at ease. Slowly, Ava began to settle into her new life. But she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Henry Caldwell than met the eye. The days in the Caldwell mansion were quiet, yet Ava's curiosity grew with each passing moment. Though Henry maintained a professional distance, she began to notice small acts of kindness that hinted at a deeper character. One afternoon, as Ava explored the east wing of the mansion, she overheard a conversation between 2 of the household staff. Their voices were low, but the mention of her mother's name caught her attention. I still can't believe Mr. Caldwell covered all of Mrs. Morgan's medical expenses, one of them whispered. And the debts, too. He didn't even hesitate. Ava's heart skipped a beat. She had known about the arrangement, but hearing how quickly and quietly Henry had acted filled her with a mix of gratitude and confusion. Why would a man like Henry go to such lengths for someone like her? Determined to understand, Ava confronted him that evening. She found him in his study, reviewing a stack of documents. "Henry," she began, her voice firm but hesitant. "I overheard the staff talking today. They mentioned my mother's bills and debts. I know it was part of the agreement, but why? Why would you do so much for someone you barely know?" Henry set down his pen and looked at her thoughtfully. "Because I believe in investing in people," he said simply. "You reminded me of someone I cared about deeply, a woman who deserved a chance to rise above her circumstances but never got it. When I met you, I saw that same determination and potential." Ava was stunned into silence. She hadn't expected such an honest answer, nor the depth of his reasoning. "You have strength, Ava," Henry continued. "You may not see it yet, but you will. And when you do, I want you to remember this moment, because it's not about what I've done for you, but what you'll do with it." His words lingered in her mind long after she left the study. For the first time, Ava began to see Henry not as a distant benefactor, but as a man with genuine kindness and a belief in her potential. Intrigued by Henry's motivations, Ava decided to learn more about his life and work. She spent her mornings reading about Caldwell Industries and his philanthropic endeavors. The more she uncovered, the more she realized that Henry wasn't just a wealthy businessman. He was someone who used his resources to create opportunities for others. One day, Henry invited her to accompany him to a community center he had funded. The center provided education, job training, and resources for underserved communities. As they toured the facility, Ava watched as Henry interacted with staff and visitors, his demeanor warm and approachable. "This is one of my proudest projects," Henry said, gesturing to a classroom filled with eager students. "It's not just about giving money. It's about creating something that lasts, something that empowers people to build better lives." Ava was struck by the passion in his voice. For the first time, she began to understand the depth of his vision. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked as they sat in the center's small garden. "Because I want you to see what's possible," Henry replied. "You've spent so much of your life surviving, Ava, but I think you're capable of more, of leading, of making a difference." His words sparked something in her. That evening, Ava stayed up late, researching ways she could contribute. By the next morning, she had an idea, a housing project for single mothers, inspired by her own mother's struggles. When she shared her vision with Henry, he listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "It's ambitious," he said, "but I believe you can do it. If you're willing to put in the work, I'll help you get started." Buoyed by his confidence, Ava threw herself into the project with newfound purpose. Under Henry's mentorship, she began meeting with architects, planners, and community leaders, learning the intricacies of turning her idea into reality. As the weeks went by, Ava felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was building something meaningful. And as she worked alongside Henry, she began to see him not just as a benefactor, but as a mentor who had given her the tools to change her life. As Ava grew more immersed in her housing project, her confidence blossomed. She worked tirelessly, meeting with contractors, reviewing blueprints, and addressing the needs of the single mothers the project aimed to support. With Henry's guidance, she learned to navigate challenges, but increasingly, he encouraged her to trust her own instincts. "You don't need me to hold your hand," Henry said one afternoon as they discussed a funding proposal. "You've got the vision and the drive. Now it's time to lead." The words were both empowering and daunting. While Ava appreciated his faith in her abilities, the weight of responsibility felt heavy. Nevertheless, she pressed forward, determined not to disappoint him or herself. One evening, during a rare moment of quiet in the mansion's study, Henry shared his long-term intentions. "I've been thinking about the future," he began, his tone unusually reflective. "My legacy isn't just about wealth. It's about creating something lasting. I want you to carry that forward, Ava." Her eyes widened in surprise. "You're asking me to take over your work?" In time, he replied with a small smile. You've proven you have the heart and the mind for it. I trust you to continue what I've started. The enormity of his trust struck Ava deeply. She promised herself she would rise to the challenge, though doubt lingered at the edges of her mind. Could she truly live up to Henry's expectations? As the project progressed, Ava began to rely less on Henry and more on her own judgment. She made decisions with growing confidence, consulting with him only when necessary. The shift in their dynamic was subtle but profound. Ava was no longer just a beneficiary of Henry's generosity. She was becoming his equal, a partner in building a shared vision for the future. Months later, the housing project was completed, standing as a testament to Ava's hard work and determination. The modest complex provided safe, affordable homes for dozens of single mothers and their children, offering not just shelter but a fresh start. Henry insisted on hosting a grand celebration at the mansion to mark the occasion. The event was attended by community leaders, philanthropists, and beneficiaries of the project. Ava felt a mix of pride and nerves as she stood before the crowd, ready to speak. As she stepped onto the small stage, Henry's reassuring nod gave her courage. She took a deep breath and began. When I first started this journey, I never imagined I'd be standing here today, Ava said, her voice steady but emotional. This project isn't just about providing housing. It's about giving hope and dignity to those who need it most. I'm grateful to everyone who believed in this vision and made it a reality. The applause that followed was thunderous. Ava's heart swelled as she looked out at the faces of the women and children whose lives would be forever changed. Toward the end of the evening, Henry made his own announcement, taking the stage with his signature poise. Tonight, we celebrate not just the completion of this project, but the incredible woman who brought it to life. Ava Morgan has proven herself to be a true leader, and it is my honor to name her the new head of the Caldwell Foundation. The room erupted in applause as Ava stood frozen, stunned by the announcement. Tears filled her eyes as she glanced at Henry, who gave her a subtle but encouraging smile. Later, as the guests mingled, Henry pulled her aside. You deserve this, he said simply. You've worked hard, and you've earned the respect of everyone here. Now it's your time to shine. Ava felt a wave of gratitude and determination. For the first time, she truly believed she was capable of continuing Henry's legacy. The shy waitress who had once struggled to find her place in the world was now a confident leader, ready to embrace the future. The days following the celebration were a whirlwind for Ava. The recognition she received from Henry and the public felt overwhelming yet invigorating. As she officially stepped into her role as the head of the Caldwell Foundation, she took time to reflect on how much her life had changed since that fateful day at the diner. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings, Ava found herself in the mansion's library, a place she had grown to love for its tranquility. Henry was already there, sitting in his favorite armchair by the fire, a book resting on his lap. Taking a moment to breathe, he asked with a knowing smile. She nodded, sinking into the chair opposite him. It's all happening so fast, she admitted. Sometimes I can't believe how far I've come. And it's all because of you. Henry's expression softened. You give me too much credit, Ava. I may have given you a push, but everything you've achieved, you did that. You've worked hard, made sacrifices, and taken risks. That's all you. Ava shook her head, her voice thick with emotion. I wouldn't have had the chance without you. You saw something in me when I couldn't even see it in myself. You've changed my life in ways I can't even put into words. Henry leaned forward, his gaze intent. Remember this, Ava. The best way to honor what you've been given is to pass it on. Help others find their potential, just as you found yours. His words stayed with her as they sat in companionable silence, the crackling fire filling the room. Ava realized that their bond, which had begun as a transactional arrangement, had grown into something far deeper, a mutual respect and understanding that neither had expected. That night, Ava resolved to carry forward Henry's philosophy of empowering others, ensuring that his legacy would continue to touch lives long after he was gone. As the months rolled by, Ava took on more responsibilities, managing the foundation and expanding its reach. Henry, now in his late years, began to slow down, spending less time in his study and more in the garden or the library. His health, once robust, was gradually declining. One afternoon, Ava found him in the garden, seated under the shade of a large oak tree. He looked friendlier than she remembered, but his eyes still held the sharpness that had always defined him. "Come, sit," he said, gesturing to the bench beside him. Ava joined him, her heart heavy. She had noticed the changes in him, but hadn't wanted to acknowledge what they meant. "I'm proud of you, Ava," Henry began, his voice steady but quieter than usual. "You've exceeded every expectation I ever had. Watching you grow into the woman you are today has been one of the greatest joys of my life." Tears pricked at Ava's eyes. "Henry, I don't know if I'm ready to do this without you." He smiled, placing a hand over hers. "You are. You've been ready for a long time. I've taught you everything I can, and now it's your turn to teach others." They sat together for a while, the garden alive with the soft hum of nature. Henry spoke of his hopes for the foundation and the importance of staying true to its mission of compassion and purpose. "When the time comes," he said, "don't mourn me for too long. Celebrate the work we've done together and carry it forward. That's the best way to honor what we've built." Ava nodded, unable to speak. She knew this was Henry's way of preparing her for the inevitable, and while the thought of losing him was unbearable, she also felt a deep gratitude for all he had given her. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ava promised herself that she would continue to build on Henry's legacy, ensuring that his vision of hope and generosity would endure. She would make him proud, no matter what challenges lay ahead. It happened on a quiet morning. Ava had just finished reviewing a proposal for a new community outreach program when a call from Henry's caretaker interrupted her focus. The weight in the woman's voice told Ava everything before she even said the words. Henry had passed away peacefully in his sleep. The days that followed were a blur. The mansion, usually filled with the quiet hum of Henry's presence, felt impossibly empty. Ava organized a private funeral, inviting only those who had been closest to him. Despite its simplicity, the ceremony was profound, a testament to the man Henry had been. Generous, determined, and deeply compassionate. As she stood by his grave, Ava felt a wave of emotions she couldn't name. Loss, gratitude, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility intertwined. In her hand was a note Henry had left for her, written in his unmistakable handwriting. "You are more than ready, Ava. Trust yourself and never stop reaching for more. The world needs people like you. Thank you for everything you've given me, more than I ever expected. I'll always be with you in spirit. Keep building our legacy." The words were both a comfort and a challenge. Ava clutched the note to her chest, a silent promise forming in her heart. She would honor Henry's life by continuing his work, not just as a duty, but as a tribute to the man who had believed in her when no one else had. As she walked away from the gravesite, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the scene. Ava took it as a sign, not of an ending, but of a new beginning. Years later, Ava stood before a crowd at the grand opening of a new shelter funded by the Caldwell Foundation. The event was attended by dozens of families whose lives had been transformed by the foundation's efforts. Ava, now a confident and seasoned leader, stepped up to the podium with a serene smile. "Today, we celebrate more than just a building," she began, her voice steady and warm. "We celebrate the power of compassion, the strength of community, and the vision of a man who believed that everyone deserves a chance to succeed. Henry Caldwell changed my life, and in doing so, he inspired me to help others in the same way." She paused, looking out at the audience. Among them were single mothers, children, and young adults whose futures had been shaped by the programs the foundation now spearheaded. "Henry taught me that wealth is not about what you have, it's about what you can give. His belief in me gave me the courage to believe in myself, and for that, I will always be grateful. This foundation isn't just his legacy, it's ours. Together, we will continue to build a world where hope and opportunity are within everyone's reach." The crowd erupted into applause, but Ava's thoughts drifted to the quiet moments she had shared with Henry, the lessons, the encouragement, and the profound kindness that had brought her to this moment. Later that day, as Ava walked through the shelter, she met with some of the families who would call it home. A young mother with 2 children approached her, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," the woman said, her voice trembling. "You've given us a chance I never thought we'd have." Ava smiled, her heart swelling with purpose. "That's what we're here for," she replied softly. As she left the shelter, Ava glanced up at the sky, her heart filled with gratitude. She thought of Henry and the incredible journey that had begun with a simple conversation in a diner. His legacy wasn't just in the wealth he had shared, but in the lives he had touched, hers most profoundly of all. And now, as she carried his vision forward, Ava knew that legacy would continue to grow, spreading hope and transforming lives for generations to come. Years passed, but Ava's mission remained unwavering. The Caldwell Foundation expanded its reach, touching countless lives, and Ava became a beacon of hope for those in need. She continued to lead with the same compassion and determination Henry had shown her, always staying true to the values he had instilled in her. Though Henry was no longer physically present, his influence remained, woven into every project, every decision, and every life they had touched. Ava often thought of him, his quiet wisdom, his belief in her, and the unwavering trust he had placed in her when she had doubts. As she stood before another group of beneficiaries, watching their faces light up with gratitude and hope, Ava realized something profound. Henry hadn't just left her a fortune or a foundation. He had left her the ability to inspire, to uplift, and to transform. The legacy he had built with her was not one of wealth, but of something far greater, a legacy of purpose, compassion, and the ripple effect of one life changing another. And Ava knew, deep in her heart, that this was only the beginning. Her journey wasn't just about carrying on Henry's work. It was about creating new ripples that would extend far beyond her own lifetime, creating a wave of change that would continue to carry hope, just as Henry had hoped all along. In that moment, Ava smiled to herself. She was ready to take on the future, for it was hers to shape, as Henry had once shaped hers. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end of this incredible journey. Your time and attention mean the world to us, and we hope you enjoyed every twist and turn of Ava's transformation. If you found the story inspiring and heartfelt, don't forget to give it a like and share it with those who may need a little hope today. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on more stories that can uplift and inspire you. Your support makes all the difference, and we'd love for you to be part of this growing community. Thank you once again, and we look forward to bringing you more stories soon. Stay tuned, and until next time, take care,